posted on its social media account that they're aware of the loss of a US KC-135 refueling aircraft. The Post goes on to say that there was an incident. It occurred in friendly airspace. 2 aircraft were involved in the incident. One of the aircraft went down in western Iraq. The second landed safely. CENTCOM says this was not due to hostile fire or friendly fire. We're joined now by Pennsylvania Democratic Representative Chrissy Houlihan. She served in the U.S. Air Force and is a member of the Armed Services and Intelligence Committees in the House. This just happened, so I know what we know about it, what you know about it might be very limited, but can you give us any idea of what happened or what this sounds like to you, an Air Force veteran?
Sure. So this is a really large refueling aircraft. There are hundreds of them in service, mostly in times like this, doing exactly what they're designed for, which is to refuel both bombers and also smaller jets, as an example. And they fly with a boom that is able to attach to a smaller or larger plane and deliver fuel. So that extends the range of each of these planes very considerably. It's sort of a leapfrog effect from one place to another. And so it is, without any more information than you have, entirely possible that there was some sort of an accident in the process of refueling that would have involved both aircraft, and that one might have gone to safety, as the tweet seems to indicate, and one may have gone possibly to ground. And there seem to be some sort of efforts on recovery of the aircraft and also of rescue. And so that's effectively what we know. And what we also know is that this is the cost of war. It's enormous.
Hello, Jackie. How are you? Welcome back, everybody, to the SpinCycle live stream. If you're new here, go ahead and subscribe. We are talking about, obviously, the new events of the last 24 hours. The fact that 6 or 7 more American soldiers were killed, and Trump is getting ready to send ground troops in. Hey, Carolyn Newby, how are you? Glad you're here. Go ahead and subscribe. So, Trump's getting ready to send ground troops in. We had 2 fueling airplanes collide, apparently, it wasn't because of Iranian rockets or anything like that. They collided, and this is the cost of war. When you start a war, people are going to die, and not just people on the other side of the war.
Complex. The logistics of getting all of this stuff, people and product across oceans, is an enormously hazardous effort, and one that requires everything to go exactly right. And so we won't know probably for a while what actually happened, but that's effectively what's likely to have happened.
Obviously, the greatest cost of war has to do with our fallen service members and our wounded fallen.
I worked in Manhattan in the 80s when the asshat was being an asshole. I've hated him. Yeah, I was in high school in Long Island in the 80s, the late 80s, so I also remember, I've hated Trump, or I've not respected him for sure. That whole time I was, dismissive of him till the idiots in our country made him president.
About service members, we know of 7 who have been killed, more than 140 wounded, and that was from a few days ago. We don't know what resulted in this accident. Hopefully nothing, but
my work is easy because I use ClickUp. Here's how I keep track of all my tasks. I start by brain dumping everything.
It's tough to say.
You're getting more details on this crash, this KC-135 refueling aircraft. Missing, CENTCOM says it went down over western Iraq. What are you learning?
Yeah, to be clear, CENTCOM says that there was no hostile or friendly fire involved in this incident, but our Pentagon team understand from a US official that the second aircraft was also a KC-135.
That being said, Carolyn, a lot of people I did go to school with and stuff, Long Island is very red, to be honest. But a lot of people I did go to school with, they worship Trump for some reason. I don't understand why. People just, a lot of people, especially, I grew up in a very middle class neighborhood, Hicksville, Long Island, very middle class. A lot of people where I grew up worship money, so they think anybody who has money, like Trump, is smart and winning, which is totally ridiculous. Trump inherited everything he ever had. Northport. My sister currently lives in Northport, but her and her husband are not Trumpers, but we grew up in different circumstances. Me and my sister, we had a single mom with 5 kids, so it was definitely, we were probably the poorest kids in our neighborhood growing up and all that stuff. So we had a little different perspective growing up. Okay, let's keep going.
5 refueling aircraft, and that at least 5 crew members were on board the one that crashed. Now, search and rescue operations are underway. The aircraft is technically missing at this point. And I think there were lots of questions asked as to exactly how these 2 refueling aircraft, who could often operate in cells in the sky, got into this particular incident. Now, the number of crew on board, 5 in the one that is indeed missing. You would normally expect 3 or 4 crew members to be on board a KC-135, perhaps 1 or 2 more for navigators, or alternatively, that larger number might suggest it could have been a medical evacuation craft. All unclear at this moment, but still an urgent moment, certainly.
Yeah, Carolyn, that's pretty much how I became a Democrat. I've always kind of been a Democrat. I've never voted for Republican in my life. Chazzy's back, baby. Chaz is back, baby. Yeah, that asshole tried to convince me about the benefits of eating your own egg. I have no idea what that means, but I'm sure it's some kind of sarcasm.
US rescue workers are desperately trying to locate these crew members. I think, Erin, you may, near your position there, close to Ben Gurion Airport in Israel, according to some of the open source data we've been seeing on flight monitors, one of those 2 KC-135s did a lot of circling near where you are, possibly dumping fuel, put out an emergency signal earlier on today. We understand that may well be connected to that particular incident, indeed be that second plane. But another, I think, stark reminder of the risks that US personnel endure every day, even though this incident appears to have been something of an accident, early stage, early information at this point now, Erin.
Yeah, well, obviously raising a lot of questions, as you see, why there were 2, why there may have been more people on board crew than usual.
Okay, so yeah, obviously that was an accident, Like I said, during war, shit's gonna happen, people are gonna die, you got planes in the air, you got bombs going off, you got, everything going on. So that's why you just don't start wars haphazardly, but if you're an idiot like Trump who, has no idea what consequences are because nobody's ever held him accountable for anything, yeah, then you're gonna just, start a war because you woke up one morning, on the wrong side of the bed, or I guess, according to Mike Johnson, Trump doesn't sleep. He doesn't need to sleep. I've been so involved with politics since the Vietnam War, watching the news and all the troops. They don't do that anymore. I also grew up with cousins who were in the war or at Woodstock. I grew up in Putnam County, right above. Yeah, I know Putnam County. My first job out of high school, 18, was driving a truck to every borough in New York and delivering bulk ice cream. It was hilarious. So now Trump wants to send troops in. Let's see what's going on with that.
Because moments after he spoke, he talked about Kharg Island, and this is really a big deal. I mean, 90% of Iran's oil exports go through Kharg Island. There have been questions as to why the United States or Israel had not bombed Kharg Island, particularly given its economic strength for Iran. It is a place, it is kind of the sensitive area, and it's clearly something that the U.S. could have targeted. President Trump had been asked questions about this. He kind of evaded the answer earlier today. Now, here's what he said. Because there is so much oil infrastructure in this area, he specifically says, I have chosen not to wipe out the oil infrastructure on the island. However, should Iran or anyone else do anything to interfere with the free and safe passage of ships through the Strait of Hormuz, I will immediately reconsider this decision. There is a reason why this is so important. Earlier today, I was talking to White House officials. They said there were...
So yeah, Trump's saying that he chose not to wipe out the oil infrastructure. If he wipes out the oil infrastructure in Iran, then Iran retaliates, wipes out the oil infrastructure in Bahrain, the UAE, all those Middle Eastern countries that they are in close proximity to and easy to bomb. Then the US economy completely crashes. Basically, the world economy completely crashes. I mean, it's already crashing. And Trump knows this, so Trump doesn't have a choice. If he goes after Iran's oil infrastructure, that's gonna, that's the refineries and stuff. That's not just ships going through the Strait of Hormuz. That's the oil refineries. That'll set back the oil industry for not just months, but probably years. And, Trump knows if he doesn't fix the economy by the midterms, that it's impeachment road for him, because the Democrats will dominate the midterms. They're going to dominate the midterms no matter what, as far as the House goes. But if they, by some miracle, got 60 seats in the Senate, Trump would not only be impeached, but he'd be convicted of impeachment, because it takes 60 senators to convict for impeachment, and he would be gone and probably on his way to prison, where he should be already, but,
There was going to be actions as early as this weekend, as early as this evening, that were going to show how the U.S. was working towards trying to get these ships through the Strait of Hormuz, getting the Strait of Hormuz opened again. That is clearly what they were referring to, was these explosions in Kharg Island, a place that had seemed like it was going to be off limits. Clearly here he is saying, open up the Strait of Hormuz, or else you're going to see more bombs dropping and more strikes in the area. Now, we did...
Just for context, guys, I went ahead and got this up on Google Earth. So I think I don't know. That's Larak Island. Maybe this is Kharg, Hormuz Island. I think they're going to send the troops into this Kharg Island. It's one of these islands here. I'm not sure which one. If any of you guys know, go ahead and let me know. Maybe this one? No. I already looked at that one. Guess But anyway, they want to take one of these islands here, which apparently is important for holding the Strait of Hormuz. Maybe it's this. And I'm sure they want to set up an airfield on it and everything. But anyway, this is 20 miles right here. So that's the Strait of Hormuz. That's where all the oil is. It's the choke point for all the oil that's not leaving. So if you see Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, all these ports are here where the oil leaves out here. And we can't attack Iran. The Iraqis tried doing that with 1 million troops. And if you look at the shoreline here, it's just all mountains. It's some of the most unhospitable land in the world as far as, trying to attack and take this land. And we will lose thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of troops if we try and take this shore. This is apparently, this is all Iran here. And this shore is their shoreline here is apparently longer than the California coast. So it's nearly impossible. I mean, I think Iraq found it impossible, and I think a million people died in that battle back in the 80s, the late 80s, when Iraq tried to take Iran, or maybe it was the 90s. Correct me if I'm wrong, if you know better. But yeah, it's strategically impossible. I mean, look at these mountain ranges here. It's just crazy. Anyway, back to the news.
did also hear from President Trump just seconds before he said
You guys are new,
that
go ahead and
social posts
subscribe.
saying,
I'm almost
that
at
those Navy
3,000.
escorts were going to start happening soon.
On
I
my
was
way to
told
a
by White House
million.
officials they were going to have to clear that area. They have to make sure it was safe for the military. They're going to have to get the resources there. But he did say the word soon, and one of the more
Yeah, Carolyn, I do not remember Watergate. I mean, I remember it from school and stuff like that, but yeah, I was just a couple years old when that happened, but it definitely happened in my lifetime.
interesting things we heard him say is that he
I think my first interaction was with Watergate was as a teenager watching the movie with Dustin Hoffman and was it Robert Redford? And I was like, what is this? What's going on? What's this all about? But I mean, I definitely know all about Watergate now, but compared to what's gone on in the past year in the government, Watergate is like child's play.
he has officially taken any sort of timeline off the table. He was asked specifically about his 4 to 5 weeks comments, and he said that he couldn't give a timeline anymore. So I know that we had been reporting that the administration had been saying this, but this is Donald Trump here
Okay.
officially saying that
Kharg
that 4 to
Island,
5
there
week
it is.
timeline
So-
is off the
Wait,
table.
let's see. There. Kharg, I guess it's spelled, they're spelling it Kharg. Kharg Island, and I'm sure they want that just to set up base there. It's weird that it's spelled differently on Google Earth than on the news.
And instead replacing it with a big question mark.
Talk to us about the significance of this moment and that threat, too, that Kristen told us about, of the president basically saying, hey, I left a little bit in terms of oil infrastructure, but if you don't do what I say, we'll come back.
So Erica, Kharg Island, you see it on the map there, it's about 25 miles off the coast of Iran, very northern part of the Gulf. It is the valve for Iran's oil economy, and of course they're almost wholly dependent on their oil economy for their own government revenues. The Gulf is very shallow in Kharg Island.
Okay, that's the key. So that's where the Iranian oil economy is centralized, basically.
A small island there, it's about 8 by 9 square miles. It has
And they put 5,000 Marines in the area. Sorry to interrupt. They put 5,000 Marines there. They just sent 5,000 Marines. I guess that's the force they're going to use to take Kharg Island. But I would say even that's going to be, iffy.
the deep water ports where tankers can pull in, get filled up, and then go through the Strait of Hormuz and onward to where they might be delivering their oil. Of course, Iranian oil is illicit oil, is under U.S. sanctions, but that is basically without those terminals and without that island being operational, Iran cannot export its oil, and that's why it's so significant. I take this as the U.S. saying, okay, you guys are trying to use this pressure point, which the new Supreme Leader declared yesterday in the Strait of Hormuz. We have pressure points too on you. So, knock this off. That's what they're trying to say. But I also see, Erica, with the deployment of a U.S. Marine Force, the possibility of more military operations on that island. I think that's highly risky. The Iranians can respond to that. But clearly, bottom line, this conflict is not coming to an end anytime soon. There's
Certainly
a 4 to 6 weeks was said at the beginning. That's basically the CENTCOM plan. I think it might go on a little bit longer than that.
And the president, as Kristen was just reporting, taking that off the table. When we look at this moment and the Kharg Island piece of it now that is being brought in, I mean, Brett walked us through the significance of this. But the fact that, as he pointed out, we have potentially this unit of up to 2,500 Marines and sailors going in. They are also
I think it's 5,000
well-versed
now.
in combat operations. With all of this playing out tonight, is that how you would envision perhaps these forces being used? Is perhaps needing to go to Kharg Island?
Perhaps, but I'd be reluctant to put boots on the ground in this area for a number of reasons. The Iranians can come down and they can block the Strait of Hormuz. The Strait of Hormuz is a particularly unpleasant place to operate in any time of the year, particularly at night. Having been there during the Iranian hostage crisis on a nuclear aircraft carrier, it's a problem. And, boots on the ground, I've been through this a number of wars, served with a bunch of people who spent a fair amount of time in Hanoi as visitors under very unpleasant circumstances, and were great heroes. But if we start putting boots on the ground, how do we ensure that they're protected? How do we ensure that they get out if we have to? So that's the initial problem, I see.
Unlock high performance and complete control with VPS hosting from home.
So guys, if you're new, go ahead and subscribe. If you want to help out the channel, check out my listed products. I do get a cut of those, but the only products I list is stuff I use, like the Galaxy phone. I film all these lives on my Galaxy S20. I know it's time to upgrade, but that's the beauty of a Galaxy phone, a Samsung phone, which I like better than iPhones. I know people love iPhones, but I've been able to use this phone and update it for the last 5 years. You don't have to change out your phone every year like an iPhone to keep up with the software updates. And also when I'm traveling, I can change out the SIM card in this phone, and I just have many more options for apps and stuff like that. But if you want to help out the channel, if you're looking to buy a phone, use the link on the screen here. But the best way to help out the channel is subscribe, like, comment, and hit that bell, and let's keep going with our news.
So this moment, can you put in perspective to us, Brett laid out how significant it is from a military perspective, but is to lay out for us what this actually means to Iran?
Well, yeah.
I think this is entering the war to a different level. This is going to be a new chapter in this war. Kharg Island is the main point where Iran is exporting this oil. And if they can't export oil, or if they lose control over the island, it's going to hurt the Revolutionary Guards Corps in a major way. And I think considering what happened today inside the country and the statements that we were hearing from Iranian officials, they are trying to deflect attention from such realities. Today, Tehran came under quite intense bombing. There was a bombing right in the middle of the demonstrations where some of the leaders showed up. And all we heard from them was that Iranian leaders are there among their own people while the bombs were dropping, the country's infrastructure is getting destroyed. Ordinary Iranians are the ones who are paying a big price for this. But the reality is that the country's oil flow is under question depending on how much Kharg Island has been damaged. And then the big question about the power vacuum. The statement that came out yesterday has raised more questions than given answers. There are questions about the new Supreme Leader's whereabouts, his condition, and why didn't he deliver the speech himself, and why didn't he have someone he could trust who could deliver it? So these are really big questions, and I'm afraid we are entering a totally different chapter now.
In terms of this totally different chapter, Brett, as you were just saying, this signifies to you far beyond 4 to 6 weeks, right? And the president saying, basically taking the timeline off the table. How important is this weekend, I would even say, these next couple of days? What is that going to tell us in terms of the trajectory here?
I think I've been saying since the beginning that the military plan is about 4 to 6 weeks. I think that was a decent assumption. There was some thought earlier this week that given the economic pressure, perhaps President Trump would just declare victory and cut it short. I now think the way this is developing, that's actually not going to happen. And look, Iran decided to play this card of the Strait of Hormuz. And the Supreme Leader said we would use it as a pressure valve. And that is going back all the way to the Carter Doctrine, Erica. We have a doctrine that outside powers or other powers, including Iran, cannot seize this territory, and if they do, it's a vital interest of the United States, and it'll be repelled by military force. So it's a very serious issue. I am not surprised now that the United States is now moving to perhaps organize a naval coalition with coalition partners. I have to say, that is extremely difficult work. I did this in the Red Sea. We developed a coalition of almost 20 countries. The UK, Denmark were very effective there to try to open a passage called the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, which was under fire from Iranian weapons fired by a group in Yemen called the Houthis. But it's still hard work. Even with that coalition, shippers did not have the confidence to make that passage, just given the threat. So This is hard, difficult, tedious work. It'll take weeks. But I mean, I do think it's important to try to get control of this so that Iran cannot hold this,
Okay, by the way, Carolyn, if you're still there, I see you wrote, that's why I'm a Democrat. I'm actually an independent. I think the Democrats are weak. I don't like Chuck Schumer. I don't like Hakeem Jeffries. I think they're beholden to their corporate overlords, just like most politicians are. Sanskar Patel, how are you? Welcome, subscribe. I think, we need a full reboot in American politics, and we need to get all those old sons of bitches out of there. And get some young blood in there. Independent thinkers, people who want to work for the people. We also need to change our laws, like Citizens United needs to be overturned. I know that's never going to happen until John Roberts dies, because, we appoint Supreme Court, or unless we pack the court, which Biden should have done as soon as he got in office. That should have been his priority. I'm good, Shanker. How are you? Thanks. Charles Dan, corporate elite or what? The Republicans have worked for decades to pack the court in their favor, while the Democrats, Chuck Schumer, and his ilk slept on it, basically. And this is what we have. We have the overturning of Roe versus Wade, however you feel about that. But much worse, we have the Citizens United decision from 2010 that, claims that money is speech, and corporations and billionaires can put as much money into politicians as they want through PACs, which basically has neutered the people, the population, the 99%, from being able to control politicians. I'm just checking. My Twitter feed, like I always do. Join me to support elite Ukrainian paratroopers. Ukraine needs our help more than ever. Yeah. Basically, because of the oil now, if you haven't heard, Russia is now, instead of selling their oil for $28 a barrel or $23 a barrel, they're getting market rate $81 a barrel, and they're taking in tons of money now, the Russians. So, Vladimir Putin loves this war. I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if Vladimir Putin encouraged this war, through special ops, or just, calling Trump up, because Trump's such a cuck for Putin. Call him up and saying, yeah, that'd be a great idea. Go to war with Iran. Just using Trump like he always does, because he's like, he's playing three-dimensional chess, and Trump's playing checkers, basically. But yeah, so now the Russians are in great shape financially now. They're getting all their oil revenue back, plus some. They diverted all their ships now to Asia, because Asia is completely cut off from oil, and Asia's economies are going to crash if they don't get oil. So they're going to pay whatever the Russians want for their oil. So that's the current state of things. Trump, this is what you get when Donald Trump doesn't think things through, because he doesn't think, basically. Why is the media not making a bigger deal with the fact that Trump says it's fair Putin is helping Iran kill U.S. troops?
Do you think Putin is helping him?
I think he might be helping him a little bit, yeah, I guess, and he probably thinks we're helping Ukraine, right?
And you are, right?
Yeah, we helping him also, and so he says that, and China would say the same thing, you know, it's like, hey, they do it and we do it, in all fairness.
Do you think Putin is helping them?
I think he might be,
Unbelievable. In one of the most disgusting moments in U.S. history, Trump defends Putin helping Iran kill Americans. In all fairness, they do it, and we do it in Ukraine.
So what are you hearing from any Republicans in the House? Are they worried about gas prices and what this looks like right now?
As you know, Thomas Massey and I led the Iran War Powers Act. We had led the
Yep.
Powers Act. We didn't get many Republicans. There were about 15 Republicans who were concerned, and their biggest concern is that we don't put ground troops there, we don't get involved in a regime change war, and now, of course, gas prices. So what have we achieved? I mean, we've taken Khamenei, who's 86, and so far we've replaced him with his son, Khamenei Jr., who's even a bigger hardliner. The regime is still in power. Gas prices are up. Our service members are dying. I just hope the president stops this war. I don't care about the politics. I just want the war to end. It'll bring gas prices down. Our troops won't be as much risk, and our country won't be as much risk.
What are you hearing from any Republicans in the House? Are they worried about gas prices and what this?
As an Iranian American, and on behalf of many, I thank you and all the courageous men and women of our military. God bless you. Blah, blah, blah. 13 killed in the war so far. Trump didn't look that excited when he was at the funeral of the troops in Dover the other day. He looked bored. It's becoming like Vietnam, but without the troops. The country with the most powerful military on earth appears to be losing another imperialist war. The Iran conflict suddenly feels like the beginning of another Vietnam without the troops. The U.S. is losing the war in Iran. Russian armed forces are patrolling along the Bravo line in the Golan Heights. It's confirmed, folks. Trump is sending 2,500 troops to Iran, boots on the ground. Now would be a good time to make hashtag send Barron trend again. But referring to send Barron to war. And of course, he's never going to go to war. Trump family's full of cowards, of course. USMC's U.S. Marine Corps, the amphibious 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit, 2,200 troops and sailors aboard USS Tripoli with light AFVs is now being sent to the ME from Japan. Trump is sending U.S. boots on the ground as a semifinal throw of the dice in the Iran war. I am not saying final because that predatory maniac might finally threaten nukes when the Marines get clobbered. Secretary Pete Hegseth says knocking up the RGC Iranian regime. See only two things on the side of the aircraft, the stars and the stripes and the Star of David. Well said, Pete. God bless it. Let's listen to this. This guy's a total idiot.
So today, as we speak, we fly over the top of Iran and Tehran. Fighters and bombers all day picking targets as they choose. As our intelligence gets better and better and more refined. Looking up, the IRGC and Iranian regime.
Yeah, Pamela, I'm not a Newsom guy. Too much of a corporate hack.
Sees only two things on the side of aircraft. The stars and stripes and the Star of David. The evil...
He wants since the earlier of this war, but let these Gulf countries suffer. Don't mercy them even slightly. Don't give them mercy, I think he means. Even slightly. These mother FUQERs still kept the American troops in their lands. Please suppose it's a request from the entire Muslims who are on the right side of the history. This. The Pentagon is moving Marine Expeditionary Unit to the Middle East as Iran steps up in its attacks on the Strait of Hormuz. Hegseth has approved a request from Central Command for the Expeditionary Unit, typically consisting of up to 2,500 Marines. I think it's 5,000 now. Let's move over to Reddit and see what they're saying on there. I'm a fool, I guess. MAGA voter snaps after Trump attacks anyone questioning his Iran war and skyrocketing gas prices. It makes a very big difference to someone like me who has to fill in the gas tank every single week and go to work. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of what you voted for. President Donald Trump is being asked frequently when the war against Iran will be over because gas prices are adding further financial burden to Americans who are already strapped in this difficult economy. Short-term oil prices will drop rapidly when the destruction of the Iran nuclear threat is over. Quote, is a very small price to pay for USA and the world's safety and peace, he wrote on Truth Social last weekend. He then added in all capitals, only fools would think differently. It is so ironic that a billionaire who never had to work for anything in his life, doesn't even drive a car, never drove a car, probably never pumped gas in his whole life, is out there saying, you know, suck it up, basically. Only fools would think differently, you know, just, it's a small blip, you know, just suffer through the pain of having to pay $200 to fill your gas pickup, you know, or $500 to fill your semi-truck with diesel right now. He's just a ridiculous person. Teamsters call on DOJ to stop Paramount Warner Brothers merger. We've seen that happen when the corporations consolidate power. Yeah, that's not going to happen. Trump doesn't care. I mean, he cares because he wants that merger to happen, because then basically his, you know, right-wing, crazy, conservative Zionist friends, the Ellison family, David Ellison's going to control like half the media in the country. You know, the traditional media anyway. I think the part about that, that, you know, Trump and the Ellisons are just too old to understand is that most people get their media now from YouTube, you know, independent news, you know, channels like this even. Thank you for watching. But, you know, and when was the last time you turned on CNN on the television? I don't even have a television plan. Do you? I don't know. Comment below if you do. I would imagine, you know, in my 50s, you're probably in your 70s or 80s if you're still holding on. Like my mother, up till the day she died, had her, you know, I can't remember the name of her provider, her cable provider in New York, but her $89.99 a month plan to get, you know, 100 different channels of bullshit, you know, but there was a dedicated channel of CNN, a dedicated channel of Fox, you know. Who does that anymore? Even if I watch CNN or Fox, it's on the internet, YouTube or Threads or whatever. So what the fuck? Trump voted for, I voted for you to do what's right. You said you would release the alien files. but evidently that was a lie to get rid of the Epstein files. Seems like the lies just keep piling up and the sheep just keep loving it. You would think after being called a pedophile for so long, he would release the Epstein files to exonerate himself. That's the problem. If you release the Epstein files, the last thing he's going to be is exonerated. Man there without an eye, all effing liars. They've been lying and gonna keep lying. Hell, it all sounds good until they get into office. Didn't sound good to me, but okay. Okay, President Trump, I voted for you. I agree with everything you've been doing, but I am on disability and the price of diesel just went up $1.30 a gallon overnight. 130 more than it was, I'm assuming. How about you give us all stimulus to pay for the extra fuel prices we're paying now? I cannot afford to pay $5.51 a gallon for diesel. Bootstraps, you voted for this. I stood by you for 20 years. Now I don't even recognize you. Former Miss California accuses U.S. President Trump of abandoning his most loyal supporters. Guys, if you're new, go ahead and subscribe. Thank you. I'm trying to get to 3,000 subscribers. Hopefully I get there soon. I just need like 5 more, so subscribe and hit the notification bell and you will be notified when I'm doing lives or when I just drop pre-recorded videos. Someone please tell me why I should love a country that has turned its back on me and my countrymen. Fuel prices are so high that I'm forced to go bankrupt. Food prices are so high I can't eat, so what is the use? I voted for Trump, but I will never vote again in this stupid, worthless country. So apparently some Trump voters are just dropping out. You know, they're not going to vote ever again, which, you know, I implore you, if that's you, to vote for an independent like Bernie Sanders or, you know, the guy in Maine, I can't remember his name right now. Independent thinkers who aren't attached to these parties, who are cucks, the Uniparty, the Republican and the Democrat Party, they're beholden to billionaires and corporations, and they always will be until we get rid of Citizens United and change our laws around elections. And the law that Trump's trying to change now, the America Votes or whatever act he's trying to pass, is just basically to suppress poor and minority voters so he could win Congress in 2026 and not be impeached. But that's not the law I'm talking about. The law I'm talking about, and for anybody here who's too young to remember, in 2010, the Roberts Court let go through the Citizens United ruling, which says that corporations can spend unlimited money on political campaigns, corporations and billionaires, whoever wants to, but obviously you and me and the regular 99%, we can't put $1 million into, into a presidential campaign because we don't have $1 million. If we had $1 million, if everybody had $1 million, they wouldn't be worried about gas prices. We spent $5 billion the first day of the Iran war just in bombs. Think about how much $5 billion could do for our healthcare program, like if we had universal healthcare. But that's beside the point. Anyway, let's keep reading. I'm sorry for what you are going through and how you are feeling, brother. The country has not turned its back on you and is not a stupid, worthless one. It is the same country many have served and fought for, including me and you. We keep fighting for it. We keep voting for the people we feel are right for it. We don't give up and walk away, defeated because times get hard. Our troops need our support now more than ever. We need to keep the faith and pray for our nation, for our government, for our leaders, and most importantly, for our outstanding knowledge and wisdom. There is nothing easy about life, but God will get you through. The only difference between a hooker and a Democrat, a hooker will stop screwing you when you run out of money, taxes. Okay, the Federalist Papers. I don't know why they think just Democrats tax you, because the Republicans don't tax the rich. Are you rich? If you're rich, you could, yeah, vote for Republican because they're bought by the rich. You mean the party led by rapists and abusers hates women? The Intelliger. Oh, I don't want a trial. I'll just skip you altogether. Free LA. Join LA Taco. War with Iran puts further strain on America's pessimistic farmers. This is interesting. I've been thinking about this lately, how the farmers feel about the war. Oh, but it's the New York Times. Can't read it. There's a paywall. I voted for Donald Trump. I don't recognize him anymore. The voters who stood up for Trump expected him to stand up for the country. Too often now it feels like he only stands up for himself. That's what I expected from Trump. I don't know why anybody expected any different. He's the most self-centered, narcissistic egomaniac that's ever been in power. In 2016, millions of Americans supported Donald Trump for a simple reason. He felt real, he wasn't polished, he wasn't scripted. In fact, the lack of polish was part of the appeal. Trump spoke bluntly about issues many politicians avoided: political correctness, media bias, unfair trade practices, and an immigration system that millions believe Washington had ignored for years. Even many critics admitted the same thing. At least you knew what he actually thought. I don't know about that, but those instincts helped Trump win the presidency in 2016 and helped him return to power again in 2024. But somewhere along the way, something changed. Part of that shift was inevitable. The presidency has a way of pulling outsiders into the rhythms of the system they once criticized. Governing a country of more than 330 million people forces compromises, calculations, and constant pressure that reshape even the most defiant political figures. Yet part of the change was also choice. At some point, Trump stopped trying to persuade the country and focused almost entirely on energizing his base. The turning point may have come around the 2018 midterms, when clashes with the press became a defining feature of his presidency. The hostility was constant, and the possibility of bipartisan goodwill increasingly remote. From a political standpoint, that conclusion is understandable. From the standpoint of governing a country, it is deeply limiting. Running for office and governing are two very different things. Campaigns reward spectacle and confrontation. The presidency requires discipline, restraint, and a willingness to rise above it, which Trump has none of. The office itself is supposed to be larger than the person holding it. It's not a brand to expand or defend. It's a stewardship of something that belongs to the country. A president is supposed to be the leader of the entire nation. Immigration shows the shift most clearly. Trump was right that the issue had been ignored for years. Many Americans believed the system at the southern border was broken, and they weren't wrong to say so. In 2016, Trump forced Washington to confront a problem it had spent decades avoiding. But in his second term, the issue that once worked to his advantage has increasingly become a weakness. The administration's approach to immigration enforcement, the Stephen Miller approach, and particularly its handling of ICE, has often felt chaotic. At times, the policy appears driven more by spectacle than strategy, alternating between aggressive headlines and stretches of visible inaction that leave the country even more divided. Declaring a national emergency at the border may reflect Trump's belief that Congress will never cooperate with him, but emergency powers are not a substitute for leadership. They can force actions for a moment, but they cannot build a durable solution that lasts beyond one presidency. As a young Republican who voted for Trump, even after being disappointed by his behavior in 2021, I spent years defending him. I defended him in conversations, debates, and writing because I believed the larger project he represented was bigger than the controversy surrounding him. But over time, it has become harder to ignore a simple truth. Many of the voters who stood up for Trump now feel he no longer stands up for them. Children grow up seeing the White House and the person who sits behind the resolute desk. The president sets a tone for the country whether he intends to or not. That responsibility comes with the office. Donald Trump once ran as the outsider who would break the system today. Who break the system, period. Today he often looks more like the system itself. Authenticity helped him win the presidency, but authenticity cannot unify a country this large and divided. The voters who stood up for Trump expected him to stand up for the country. Too often now, it feels like he only stands up for himself. Yeah, I mean, I recognize that from the beginning, but okay. What if we're left with ruins? Doubts creep in for Iranians who supported war. Iran war promises even more pain for farmers. Virginia watchdog finds nearly 1 million calls from vets seeking care, or VA watchdog, care had key tracking data missing, CNN politics. Trump voter who regrets his ballot sues after ICE smashed his window, dragged him through broken glass, and left him bleeding. Trump voter reacts after ICE killed her U.S. citizen son. What? I didn't hear about that. Trump voter reacts after ICE killed her U.S. citizen son, Rachel Reyes' son, Ruben Ray Martinez.
Renee Good and Alex Preddy in Minneapolis, an ICE agent kills 23-year-old American citizen Ruben Ray Martinez. But ICE's involvement was only recently disclosed. And like in the cases of Good and Preddy, witnesses dispute the official account of what unfolded. In a CBS News exclusive, immigration correspondent Camilo Montoya Galvez sat down with Martinez's mother for her first television interview.
Everything was good. I just don't understand why it had to be this way.
Rachel Reyes' son, 23-year-old American citizen Ruben Ray Martinez, was killed by an ICE agent nearly 1 year ago.
I was devastated and disbelief. And it's bad enough to lose your child, but then to lose your child at the hands of law enforcement when they're supposed to be the ones to protect your child.
ICE's involvement in Martinez's killing in March of 2025 was only publicly revealed in February, roughly 11 months later. Martinez was out celebrating his birthday with his best friend Joshua Orta in South Padre Island. ICE says one of its agents fired defensive shots into Martinez's vehicle after Martinez intentionally ran over another ICE agent.
Is that something you think your son would have done?
Absolutely not. No, of course not. He was not a violent person. He was not aggressive.
DHS's account was disputed by Orta, who said in a draft declaration that his friend did not hit anyone. Orta died in a car crash in February, before he could testify. The Texas Department of Public Safety told CBS News it completed its investigation into Martinez's killing, saying it would release the records related to the case on Friday. Last month, a grand jury rejected criminal charges related to the shooting. Charles Stam is representing Martinez's family.
In a recent statement, your team said that a toxicology screen detected alcohol and marijuana in Ruben's system. Do you know whether Ruben was intoxicated when he was shot, and could that have played a role in what happened?
He was never stopped on suspicion of public intoxication or driving under the influence or anything of that nature. It's important to bear in mind that when Ruben lost his life, his car was in park, and right after those 3 bullets came through the window, went into his chest from that ICE officer, Mr. Orta's statement said that he said, "I'm sorry, sir," as his last words. This was not someone who posed a threat.
Reyes says she has deep respect for law enforcement. She also supported President Trump in the 2024 election, but she says change is desperately needed.
I don't blame President Trump for the death of my son because he wasn't the one who pulled the trigger, but I do think that something needs to be changed in that department. as far as the pattern of violence or abuse and impunity, based on the statement that they made, seeing how the words that they chose to put out there about my son, that's as insult to injury.
Greta says she does not want other families to experience her pain.
What do you miss the most about Ruben?
Just his presence, just him being there, you know, and I'm sad because I'm never going to see his children or, you know, like the hopes and the dreams that he had, he was enthusiastically looking forward to, but it was just taken from us.
Okay, guys, so this kid was killed a year ago, but now it comes out that ICE shot him with no justification. Again, these untrained ICE officers with their 47 days of training, another gimmick because Trump's the 47th president. It's ridiculous. That's not any way to run a law enforcement institute. But anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Subscribe, like, comment, hit the notifications. If you're looking for a new Galaxy phone, use the link to buy one. That would help out the channel. Of course, you don't have to. And I will see you on the next live coming on Monday.